Greetings to my fellow peace blunderers, and today I'm talking about another very important subject, and that is what to do and what not to do when you are in time trouble. I'd like to start with a little disclaimer. Most of the things that I'm going to be talking about in this video are only applicable to games without increment. That is, to the games where you make a move and you don't get extra time, extra second or two. Now, I'm just a kind of guy who likes playing without increment almost exclusively. When I play on chess.com, I only play without increment, and only in some serious tournament games where you can't really do anything different. You play 90-30, you play OTB Rapid 30 plus 15. But yeah, when it comes to online, all the time that I have at the start of the game is all the time I'm going to have for the rest of the game. Anyway, let's get started and let's look at position 8. We've got me playing as black. I'm incredibly winning with 7 points worth of extra material, and I've got a passport. Well, I've got more than one, but more prominently, I've got this pass through on h3. This is going to queen very, very soon. That's nice and all, but the problem is, as you can see, I've got 1 second left on clock. Now, just in case you don't know, I'd like to also mention this very important technical detail. On chess.com, even if you pre-move like 20 moves ahead, these moves will not be happening instantly. Each move, because of ping and because of servers, are still going to take at least 1/10 of a second, which means that from this position, from here on out, no matter how much I pre-move, I only have a maximum of 10 moves. Maybe that's not too relevant to this position, but it's going to become very relevant very soon, believe me. So, coming back to the game, I queened, of course, in the next 2 moves. We have move 1. See how I have 1/10 of a second fewer, even though that was a pre-move. Move 2, again, minus 1/10 of a second. And this is a position where I start panicking, because I look at my time and I see that I have 8 moves at best, and that is if I pre-move everything. I realize I just don't see a mate. I don't see a mate. I just couldn't find it. Maybe if I had a bit more time, I would have found a mate like in 4 and 5. I haven't checked the engine, but maybe there is a very quick one. I just started panicking and I started pre-moving random queen moves, hoping to flag my opponent, and this was my mistake. You see, in a position where you have, no matter how much material, I could have 8 or even 9 queens as far as I'm concerned. If I run out of time with my opponent still having a king, of course, and at least 1 pawn, I will lose, because it means that I timed out with my opponent having sufficient material to theoretically win. Of course, a pawn can theoretically promote, turn itself into a queen, and then, be enough to win, of course. Now, if a pawn was replaced by a knight or by a bishop, then it would be a different story. Then it would not be a loss for me. Even if I timed out, it would be a draw, because a knight or a bishop cannot mate. However, in this position, if we imagine that I have zeros on the clock, I will lose. And this is just what happened. Like I said, I just started pre-moving random queen moves, hoping to flag my opponent, but my opponent was also pre-moving. So king b6, queen b1 doesn't make any moniker of sense. It was just a random pre-move. King a7 now from my opponent. Queen c1 again, completely nonsensical, and this is where I realize that I'm not going to flag, because my opponent has a second more, and I need to try and at least draw. When I get to take this pawn, no matter how much time I've got left, I've got a draw, because a king is not sufficient material to win. So king b6, and I just about fail to capture that pawn. I place my queen on d2, 1 move away from capturing it, and next move, if I get to make one, I capture the pawn, I draw, no matter what happens. Unfortunately, king a7, and although I did pre-move queen takes a5, I just ran out of time, just 1/10 of a second away from a draw. This was very painful, but This is a perfect example of what you should do when you feel like you're not going to flag, when you feel like you can't find a mate, and you feel like you've got to at least secure a draw in these positions. All you've got to do is just take that final pawn. If there are a couple of them, take as many of them as you can. If you manage to take all of them, again, it's a secure draw no matter what happens. And this is exactly what my opponent couldn't do either here in position B. As you can see, I've got 7 seconds, my opponent has got 8, but the major difference is I've got just one pawn and my opponent is about to queen. So there you go. I, of course, tried pre-moving, saving as much time up as possible, going back and forth between h2 and g3, but I realistically understand that I'm probably getting mated here. My opponent is not pre-moving, but still moving relatively quickly, taking about 2 to 3 tenths of a second per move. So 2 tenths of a second there, just a little bit slower, 1.5 second there, as you can see on the timer up above next to their name. And here I realized, yeah, I'm probably losing here. I'm probably losing because something like queen b8 check comes, forcing my king to h4, and then this pawn can queen and mate's probably coming even with 5 seconds to go. However, my opponent panicked as well, and this is what you need to remember. At a lots of levels, and this is also like a near 2000 game, some people panic. Some people do just collapse under time pressure. And what my opponent did, I never expected, and I was so happy. I got out of jail. So what happened was, instead of doing what I just showed you, my opponent just started moving their king. Moving their king, and not even pre-moving, doing it quite slowly. Moving their king towards me. I'm like, okay. I don't understand why. Probably they wanted to try and make me like this. But my queen has got some squares like f4, so maybe mate isn't that easy. King f1 now, king back to h2, and this is it. This was the end of the game. I was shocked. I won because my opponent here ran out of time and I had that one measly pawn on f2, and this is just what helped me win. And before the last move, or should I say after the last move, because my move was the last one in the game, as you can see, my opponent had 2.1 seconds. So it is really surprising that in 2 seconds my opponent couldn't at least pre-move, or if not pre-move, capture the pawn on f2. This is quite bizarre. Maybe had to do something with connection issues, but boy was I so happy to get over the line there. Win undeserved, probably. But hey, sometimes we don't deserve to lose, sometimes we don't deserve to win. So yeah, if you're a lot of material up, but you're in time trouble and you're not sure if you can manage to convert it into a win, at least make sure of the draw by taking every single pawn that your opponent has got. Otherwise, you're going to be getting yourself in the positions like this one. Now, position C is very curious as well. As we can see, my opponent's got 5 minutes up on me. And I kind of know why this happened. This game was happening on stream and I spent a lot of time talking to the people in chat. By the way, follow me on Twitch. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. We have weekly Sunday community tournaments, so join that. But the point is, this position is just a dead draw. We've got a different colored bishop setup. We've got an equal amount of pawns, which, again, probably not even that relevant. The thing is, I can very easily draw, and this game is going to be a draw that something people over the classical board would agree immediately. All I need to do is just to move my bishop back and forth. There is no way for black or me to make progress. My king is never going to move. There is no way for my opponent to force the king out of c2 that blocks that c3 pawn, just moving the bishop back and forth, la 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 la. However, of course, at this point in time, my opponent will never agree to a draw because I've got 3 seconds left. And my only 2 feasible ways of drawing this game now without agreement is either through repetition or through the 50 move rule. First of all, my opponent is not going to be silly enough to allow repetition instead of moving their king back and forth and risking repetition. My opponent knows I've got 3 seconds left. They're not going to do that. They're going to just be moving their king around the board in a non-repetitive manner to ensure that there is no way repetition can happen. And when it comes to the 50 move rule, by the way, if you don't know what a 50 move rule is that when in a game there are no pawn moves and there are no captures within the 50 moves, after the 50th move, the game automatically becomes a draw. So basically, when nothing happens for 50 moves, the game is drawn because there is obviously no way for the sides to make progress. And it would have been such a neat thing to bail me out in this situation. However, knowing what I've explained to you earlier, I've got 3 seconds left on the clock, which means that after king takes g4, which is the final capture of the game, and the 50 move rule starts counting from here, which is move 57, I cannot reach physically. I cannot reach 50 moves now because I have 2.9 seconds on the clock, which means if I even pre-move all of my following moves, I only have enough time for 29 moves, which is nowhere near 50. And this is exactly what happened. I just kept pre-moving. Each move took 1/10 of a second away from me. And yeah, these are all pre-moves, as you can see by my timer, -1/10, -1/10. And in the end, I just lost. I lost on time, didn't manage to get to 50 moves. A shame, but sad but true. If only I had had 2 more seconds on the clock, I would have drawn this, but that's life. So next time, think twice before just idling in the game. Think twice before going to your Spotify and switching your songs up. I don't know, looking out the window or doing something else. You never know what second you save in a game can eventually save your life. Now, I would like to turn our attention to a couple of positions where it's not you who suffers from time trouble, but your opponent. And in position D, where we'll have me as your opponent, and we'll be looking at this position from Black's perspective. So as we can see, Black is sitting very, very comfortably, time-wise at least. Of course, on the board, Black is probably losing a pawn down in an open position. Bishop against knight is not very comfortable, but the saving grace is that I've got only 21 seconds left. And when this happens, when you realize that you're losing on the board, but you're completely winning on time, all you need to do is just to make the position as sturdy, as blocked up as possible. We want to stretch the game as much as we can so that our opponent just runs out of time. And what you do not do is that you don't allow your opponent to simplify the position. For example, knights especially are very tricky pieces. There are always forking opportunities. The knight just keeps hopping around the board very sporadically. It's not very easy to keep track of its movement when you are in time trouble. So what we could play is something like knight f7, bringing it closer to the area where I have the pawn majority, making it a bit more solid defensively. And generally speaking, again, at this point, we don't really care about the soundness of the moves. All we need to do is just to be making them quick and making sure we're keeping as many pawns and pieces on the board, not letting the opponent have it very easy. However, what happened in the game and what you don't do ever in situations like these, what happened in the game, my opponent played knight e8. I was very surprised to see it, and I was relieved to see it because I can now just very easily play bishop b5 check, forking, well, not forking, skewering the king and the knight. And I realized after king e7, I just take the knight, and the most chaotic piece, the most important defender of the position now is gone. And after king takes c8, yes, I've got 20 seconds on a clock, but I've got my king here close to my majority and I'm going to push the pawns forward, I'm going to promote and win. And this is what happened. Even with 20 seconds to go, I managed to eventually do that and exchange some pawns there. 2 against 1, 1 against 0. My king is going to be good enough. I traded that pawn on the king side to promote on the queen side, and here I am promoting, and eventually delivering mate with 5 seconds to go. So there you go. This was only made possible by the fact that my opponent removed their knight here by 98. I don't know why they would do that. Maybe they also panicked a little bit, although they had 4 minutes on the clock. Just keep the position as complicated as you can. Keep as many pieces on the board as you can. Don't do that. A similar situation happens in our final position, position E, where I am acting as the opponent. In our analysis, I've got 23 seconds to go, so the opponent is in time trouble. The material is equal, the position is also equal. The only thing that matters here is time. So being black in this equal position where you are 2 minutes up on your opponent and they have 20 seconds left, again, just keep the position as tricky as possible. Well, as tricky as it gets when you have such a drawn position. And most importantly, make sure that the game lasts as long as possible. So your opponent just straight rounds out of time. Don't let them off the hook. And what we see happen in this game is queen h5 check first, very reasonable. King goes to g1, and now I would recommend, as we can see, if the pawn on f7 is under attack by white, by our opponent, by me. So play something like queen d5, centralize the queen, defend the pawn, also get the queen closer to the queen side where your opponent has the majority, and just keep it tight. Your opponent, as we can see, has 20 seconds left. We're going to win this on time just by making some very humble queen moves, pawn moves, maybe king moves. It's going to be okay for us. However, what happened in the game wasn't that. And I was very relieved to see that my opponent started just going for checks. Queen d1 check, king h2, queen back to h5 check, king back to g1, and my opponent, for some reason, decided to go for the repetition intentionally. So like queen check, again, queen check, draw by repetition. I don't know why you would do that. And this is what I don't recommend doing. I have 17 seconds left on a clock, and you've got 2 minutes and 20. Just play queen to d5, keep it tricky, keep it difficult. You can always go back to checking if you so wish. Just make sure that I lose by running out of time. There's no need for me to just get a free draw by repetition. Don't be scared when your opponent has got so little time. It is your opponent who's scared usually and who's under severe stress thinking of how not to lose this on time. You just need to stay calm and play the clock. Keep as many pieces as you can, keep the game as tricky as you can, and yeah, just go ahead and win. So yeah, let me know in the comments below if you had any painful or happy time trouble experiences, and if you just so happens to find this video useful, please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitch. I stream Tuesdays, Thursdays and Sundays. Find me on chess.com, join our Discord, all that good stuff, and I'm going to talk to you very soon, my favorite unintentional gambiters. Love you all. See ya in the next one.